May the knife chip and shatter. This film is great. I love it. Though, that being said, I remember when I left the cinema when I first saw it back in 2021. I loved this film. Like, I thought it was an absolute masterpiece. I thought, oh my god, this is one of the best cinema experiences I've ever had. When I left the cinema, I was shaking. I loved it. I was so excited. I thought Denis brought the vision of the world to life so perfectly. Everybody involved just really brought the book to life. I thought the performances were great. I thought the film overall was just stunning, and I loved it. And I still do. But throughout the years, the more the film has marinated, the more I have watched this film over and over again. I mean, I've watched this film so many times. Like, this film is one of my comfort films. I just put it on. It's such a vibe. But the more I've watched it, the more it has gone down in terms of me thinking it's a masterpiece. I think it's a very, 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 very good film, but I don't think it was perfect. When I first saw it, I thought it was, like, perfect. Part 2, on the other hand, Part 2 looks perfect. But no, that's enough preamble. Let's just get straight into this. I'm excited. I love this film. And yeah, we'll get into it. We'll talk about the problems and stuff and the nitpicks, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into it. Anyways, I'm rambling now. Let's go. Bum, bum, bum. That's one of the reasons why I love Denis' vision for this. Like, who out of nowhere, when reading Dune, was just like, yeah, this is what this film needs. It needs weird Sardaukar speaking language. It's so good. It's so unique. This film revolutionized sound design. I think it won Best Sound Design at the Oscars, and for good reason.
My planet Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low, rolling over the sands. You can see spice in the air.
Okay, so Chani's opening narration is nice, and her monologue is nice. It sets up the thematic ideas of Dune, the idea of the new oppressors coming to Arrakis and such. We see the Fremen being oppressed by the Harkonnens. I was gonna say Harkonnens. God damn this film. Ever since this film, I can't stop flip-flopping between saying Harkonnen and Harkonnen. It's so annoying. We basically see the struggles of the people of Arrakis, but the thing I have with Chani's opening narration, I won't lie, I kind of wish it opened similar to how the David Lynch film opened, but we get Princess Irulan's readings. You know, the beginning is very difficult and measured time, it requires a certainty of balance, blah blah blah, because I mean, that's just iconic, and I feel like David Lynch captures that very well. Granted, in that film, the effects are, a little cheesy, a little corny, it's a little bit of a nuanced taste, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I do love David Lynch's Dune, but to a point, because that film is just so bizarre and so weird. And in many ways, I feel like Lynch captures the spirit of Dune a little bit more than Villeneuve does, but only in the sense of Lynch's Dune is weird, and he captures the weird tone of the book very well. But Villeneuve pretty much captures everything else perfectly. Like, in many ways, this feels like Villeneuve is really trying to realize Dune, really make it serious and believable for the audience, and he does a perfect job with that. Now, although this film doesn't include Irulan's teachings of Muad'Dib and such, I do like how the film kind of splices in the details of her teachings and histories of Muad'Dib into these titles here. The fact that it says the year 10191 and the idea of Caladan being the homeworld of House Atreides and such. You know, if you are to understand the histories and teachings of Muad'Dib, know that you know his places of his homeworld Caladan in the year 10191 and such. Like, the film does that in a very subtle way, and I appreciate that. Also, I love the design of the glow globes. I think it's really cool. I like how they are just kind of like hovering, because in the books, when the glow globes are described, you're just like, what is that? I like Villeneuve's interpretation of it. Honestly, that shot of Timothée Chalamet, not only is it just beautifully shot by Greg Fraser, but you look at that. That is Paul Atreides. Like, who else do you get to play? I can't see anybody else in the role to play Paul Atreides. Timothée Chalamet is perfect casting. You know, he looks like Carl MacLachlan, but he also has that kind of wiry physique that Paul is described to have in the book. Like, you look at him, that is Paul Atreides.
Mom, I just woke up.
Mom, I just woke up. The thing about this scene that I really like is the details. Not only do you get the portrait of the old Duke, not only do you get the statue of the old Duke fighting the bulls and such, but also the fact that the film is having Jessica teach Paul about the ways of the Bene Gesserit. Her teaching him to use the voice and such. Those details are things that are referenced in the book, but are not shown. And I like how Villeneuve and his writing team really bring that to the screen.
Give me the water.
I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I love the way the voice sounds and works in this film. When you're in the cinema, specifically when you listen to it in Dolby Atmos, or you see the film in IMAX, that thing rumbles. It gets into your bones. The sound design. This is what cinema is supposed to be. Again, just these shots of Paul learning and thinking, they're so good. You look at these shots, and as a fan of the book, you go, that's Paul Atreides. And to an outsider, you understand everything that Paul Atreides is about just from these shots. The filmmaking in this film is so economical. Denis, mon ami, you are a maestro, master. The scale of this scene is great too. The spaceships, the overall color palette of Caladan is so nice. The Atreides uniform, the design of the Imperials and also of the Space Guild Navigators, or like members of the Guild Navigators and such. The designs are so good, the costuming is so amazing. It all just feels tangible and real and lived in. There's a reason why this stands out and is more memorable than say something like Rebel Moon, where that just looks really artificial and generic, where this feels real, this feels lived in. This really feels like thought has been put into this.
House Atreides shall immediately take control of Arrakis and serve as its steward.
The Herald of the Change is awesome. I love this actor. I think he's really great. Also, this is just backstory. None of this stuff is in the book, but I like the way the film interprets this and really makes it grand and epic. It makes you understand the idea of where House Atreides stands in the Imperium, but also their sense of pride, their proud ownership. You really feel and understand the integrity of House Atreides.
There is no call we do not answer. There is no faith that we betray.
I love the way Oscar Isaac delivers this. Okay, if fascism is so bad, why does it look so cool? I'm joking. I have to emphasize. I'm joking when I say that. Oh, hey, look, it's the ducal signet ring. Whoa, what is what? You may address me as my duke, my lord, or sire. Again, Villeneuve does so much with characters just looking at one another. You understand the dynamics immediately, where Guy's Helmerheimer's looking at Jessica and then looking at Paul, and Jessica's just like, yeah, I was supposed to have buried a daughter, whoopsie. It's stuff that gets explained later on in the film, but Villeneuve describes it really well just with visual imagery. That's great filmmaking.
Calm boy.
I really like what this film does with Duncan Idaho, in the sense of that in the book, Duncan's not really there. Duncan's just like in the background. He's mentioned here and there. He has things said about him, like how he is one of the greatest sword masters in the Imperium, how he's one of Paul's, like, you know, teachers, and Paul sees him as kind of like a brother. But you don't really see that in the book. Paul, for the most part in the book, spends most of his time with Gurney. So, in the film, I like that they change Duncan's role and make him more of an older brother to Paul. It really demonstrates and shows how much Paul respects him. And when we get to later things and stuff happens with Duncan, I feel like as an audience, will buy it more than, say, in the books.
I've been having dreams
About a girl on Arrakis.
about Arrakis and the Fremen.
Okay, so the reason why I confuse that line so much is because in the trailers, it's just, Duncan, I've been having dreams about a girl on Arrakis, and in the film it's just about Arrakis and the Fremen. And I used to watch that trailer so many times, so when I actually see it in the film, like, it confuses my brain a bit. I'm just like, wait, no, it's supposed to be, you know, Arrakis and the Fremen, not about a girl on Arrakis and such.
I saw you lying dead, fallen in battle. Felt like if I had been there, you'd be alive.
But Paul, you were there. Oh, that's what I love. I love the writing and the way they describe Duncan's death in this, or at least Paul's premonition of Duncan's death, because you don't see Duncan's body, but Villeneuve and Greg Fraser do such a good job at illustrating, just with a single image of a beetle, that when you see this beetle, this is where Duncan's going to die. The foreshadowing is so good.
And grandfather fought bulls for sport.
Yes. Look where that got him.
Look at Paul forcefully stomping on the ground like a bratty teen.
Your grandfather said, a great man doesn't seek to lead, he's called to it. And he answers, and if your answer is no, you'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be, my son.
Can you let her be my father, goddamn?
Don't stand with your back to the door.
Okay, so there's a lot to talk about in the training scene between Paul and Gurney, because there's a lot going on. As an overall scene, it's great. As an overall fight scene, it's great, and I love the choreography. But in terms of it being an adaptation of the scene from the book, it's much more serious. It's much more severe. I love Gurney playfully slapping Paul in the arse. I think that's a really cool detail. I think it's really fun. It really establishes their dynamic straight away. I really love the way the film subtly demonstrates the idea of the slow blade penetrating the shield and such. Okay, I say that, they established that rule, but you watch every fight scene from here on out, and there is no slow blades going through these shields. They're just hacking and slashing at full speed, so, I mean, at least there's like an idea of an illusion of the slow blade penetrating the shield, but yeah, it doesn't really work in terms of the choreography. I really like how Villeneuve just lingers on shots. We get to see the choreography play out. It's not just cut, 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 cut. It's like you see them do at least like 3 or 4 moves and then it cuts. We cut to the wider shots and we see the full choreography on display. And then as the fight progresses, we see the camera move a little bit more, but it's not like shaky camera stuff. It's just slowly moving back. It's letting the audience see the action play out, and we're following the movements of the characters, and then boom, we see all the choreography. We cut to the larger shot, the fight ends. It's not all like shaky cam, cut, 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 cut. It's very purposeful. It's very specific.
Aye. But look down, my lord. You're to join me in death. I see you found the mood.
Brolin's Gurney is so good. I really like him. The only thing I have with Gurney in this film is that he's very serious. Like, Book Gurney can be serious, can be gruff, but at the end of the day, too, he is also playful, he is also fun. He's like a troubadour warrior. That's what he's described to be in the book. He can be silly, he can be funny. He's kind of like if Geralt of Rivia and Dandelion were the same character. You just merge them together and that's what Gurney Halleck is supposed to be. But Brolin's Gurney is so serious. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. His performance is great. The way he delivers this line...
You never met Harkonnens before. I have. They're not human, they're brutal!
Oh, brutal! The way it reverbs, it's so good. You feel that in the IMAX screen as well. It's so good. And I'm not saying I hate the scene. I really love the scene. It's just like when you compare it to the book, it's different. And I'm not saying that I hate or I dislike Brolin's version of Gurney at all. Not at all. He's fantastic. I'm just pointing out the difference between the book and the film. Because one of the things I love here is the fact that Brolin really sells the intensity of Gurney. He really emphasizes the severity of the Atreides moving to Arrakis and replacing the Harkonnens. And it also demonstrates the intense rivalry of the Harkonnens. And it also showcases Gurney's discontent and hatred of the Harkonnens as well. Visually, I love the look and feel of Gidi Prime. I love the Harkonnen armor. I love the bald aesthetic, even though it's not like a thing from the book at all, but it works. I love the subtlety of Paita being a mentat and doing his mental calculations. I love the way the film depicts the mental calculations, just the white eyes rolling in the back of the head. It's so good. But if I'm gonna be that book fan, where's Fader Alpha? Fader Alpha's supposed to be in this scene. Also, I really like Stellan Skarsgård's portrayal of the Baron Harkonnen. I love the way he talks and delivers his lines. I love his screen presence. He's very big, he's very imposing, he's very menacing. But the film's adaptation of the Baron is much more stern and stoic. He doesn't talk as much compared to his book counterpart. And part of the charm of the Baron is the fact that the Baron loves to talk. The Baron loves to explain his plots and pontificate and really talk and talk and talk. In many ways, it's one of his psychological tactics of just distracting his enemy and really talking a lot and giving them a false sense of security, and then boom, he attacks them. That being said though, I wish there was a bit more between the Baron and Paita in this film. Like, they don't really do the whole thing from the book where the Baron is offering Paita either Arrakis or Lady Jessica. And then there's also not the details of Paita wanting to betray the Baron because he is a assassin mentat. No, there's a specific thing they call him. I think it's just mentat assassin.
When is a gift not a gift?
When is a gift not a gift? The Atreides voice is rising.
When is a gift not a gift?
And the Emperor is a jealous man. A dangerous, jealous man. Again, I love the subtlety of how they show the highliners and the space travel. It's just you see the ship appearing and then boom, they're in the atmosphere. I love all that stuff. Not to mention Hans Zimmer's score. The Bene Gesserit theme is incredible. Greg Fraser's cinematography when the Bene Gesserit come out of their spaceship. Oh my god, the rain, the light, the black robes, the way it shimmers. Mwah. So we're about 20 minutes into the film now, and we're at the Gom Jabbar scene, which is funny because the Gom Jabbar scene is the first chapter of the book. And so I really like the change of the film, shifting it and moving it a bit further on into the story to where we finally get a chance to explore Caladan, explore the Atreides, really build up the dynamic between these characters so that when the Reverend Mother shows up and Paul is being tested, we feel a bit more connected to Paul than we do in the book, because in the book it's just like, boom, you're being tested straight away.
What's happening?
For the most part when it comes to Dr. Yue, I think Yue is portrayed very well in the film. I really love this dynamic that Paul and Dr. Yue have, because Yue is very good in this film, but he's a tiny bit underdeveloped, but that's more to do with this big overall plan. Because in terms of the character, I love this relationship between him and Paul and the way Villeneuve explores it, because they converse in Mandarin. So you as the audience can infer at some point Yue has taught Paul Mandarin, and you as an audience can infer that this is how the two converse when they want to speak in secret code and such. I love that.
You dismissed my mother in her own house.
Come here. Kneel.
How dare you use the voice on me. Is the Gom Jabbar scene the best scene in the film? Probably. I think so. It's one of the best directed scenes in the film. I love it so much. Everything from the cinematography to the set design to the sound design to the score, it's just mwah. Chalamet's performance is so good in this scene. Like, I love when the pain box activates and he starts trying to like laugh it off, just like, haha, yeah, okay, no, this actually hurts.
Oh.
And then the more the scene progresses, you really feel his pain, and he's just like kind of losing control a bit. You see the pain and effort in his face. And then there's that shift where he kind of like regains control and like harnesses, I'm assuming, like the Kwisatz Haderach self-control or whatever. It's so good.
Fear is the little death that brings obliteration.
Total obliteration. It's total obliteration. God damn it. This is where my annoying book fan kicks in. Like, no, Denis, don't change the word. There's a reason why the wording was total obliteration. Why did you get rid of the word total? That being said, I love the detail to where Paul is regaining control and his mouth is moving. I'm assuming he's also reciting the litany against fear, which, if that's the case, that's a phenomenal detail. I love that. So, although I said I love the David Lynch film, I love it because it's so silly, stupid, and weird. But in terms of being the better adaptation, this film blows that film out of the water, purely for the fact that Villeneuve understands Dune.
But there's more to it.
You steer the politics of the Imperium from the shadows.
This scene between Paul and Jessica is essentially the explanation of the Missionaria Prospectiva, which is the Bene Gesserit mission of trying to breed the Kwisatz Haderach. All that lore is communicated very efficiently and very effectively in this scene, though the thing that I find funny is how far away they're standing from each other. Like, I'm assuming they can hear each other through some, like, Bene Gesserit listening, super hearing or whatever. Like, I do think it's kind of funny how they're kind of just talking like this and like, yeah, but like, they're like this far apart from each other. Leaving Caladan is probably my favorite track on the score. I love it so much. Like, it's just, Hans Zimmer is a god, man. Okay, let's stop being weird and actually analyze this scene, because there's a reason why I love Leaving Caladan so much. And it's because this part is essentially Binary Sunset from Star Wars, but for Dune. Now, George Lucas has said that Star Wars is heavily inspired and based on Dune. And so I love the fact that Villeneuve just went, okay, if Dune is going to be stolen by Star Wars, I'm going to steal Star Wars and put it in Dune. And so this scene is essentially Paul's Binary Sunset.
My lungs taste the air of time blown past fallen sand.
I love the way the film adapts Gurney's kind of like religious takes. He's always reading the OC Catholic Bible and is always saying these like passages because that's what he does in the book. Like, again, it's just nice to see book things in the film. Honestly, one of the best feelings is when someone is adapting a book or a story and you know they love it so much that they can't help but reference these things. Like, that's how you know Villeneuve loves this book so much. He's read it so many times, he wants to include it in the film. Again, if fascism is so bad, why does it look so cool? I'm joking. If there's something I'm gonna lob as a criticism about Paul in this film, is that I feel like Paul for the first half an hour feels very flat. And I feel like it's not until he arrives on Arrakis to where we get more of his wide-eyed youthful innocence, because I feel like that's a tiny bit lost in the beginning of the film. Lisan al-Gaib! Lisan al-Gaib! Susu. No, wait, no, that's something else from the book. That's like a water chant from the Fremen or something.
Atreides!
Again, if fascism is so bad, why does it look so cool? I'm joking.
That means the Bene Gesserit have been at work here.
Planting superstitions.
Preparing the way, Paul. They see you. They see the signs.
Right, so this stuff, the whole idea of the Bene Gesserit planting the superstitions, the Missionaria Protectiva, the idea of the Lisan al-Gaib and such, that's Dune. That's the idea of a false messiah, of a false prophet. This is how you know Villeneuve understands Dune and that Paul Atreides is not a hero and such, and why Dune in many ways is not a white savior story. But no, there were countless reviews and articles calling it a white savior story for no reason, even though the film is literally going, all the stuff the Fremen is believing has been planted by the Bene Gesserit. Love the design of the ornithopters. They're just so aesthetic and cool. Like, yes, in the books the ornithopters are described to be bird-like, but I like the change to make them more like dragonflies and feel like insects. The design is just slick and cool, and the way they look on screen is just awesome.
When you have lived with prophecy for so long, the moment of revelation is a shock.
Again, this scene with the shit out mapes just highlights again the idea of planting superstition and the Bene Gesserit and the idea of Paul being a false prophet and such, but also the idea of fanaticism and believing heavily in religion, and the idea that you get lost to the idea of religious fanaticism and the idea of revelation. You're constantly searching for the signs of a revelation to appear. Okay, so the thing with the Fremen that's kind of a double-edged sword in this film is the fact that Villeneuve is both very respectful to the Islamical nature of the inspiration of the Fremen, because you literally have the Fremen walking around in like traditional Arabic looking wear. You have a lot of the imagery of the prayer beads and the burqas, and then also the score itself is very Islamical. But then also you get to the main casting of the main Fremen like Chani and Stilgar, and they're not Muslim or Arab or like, you know, Middle Eastern in any way, shape or form. And on the one hand, that is what Frank Herbert intended. The idea of the Fremen was just that in the future, religions become so distilled that it's kind of like homogenized and become like one sort of thing, so anyone could be any religion, which in many ways is a very forward-thinking and very progressive idea. But then when you think about it in terms of the modern day context, in terms of Hollywood and how they want to be more representational of the greater world and such, this is a problem, because you should be hiring more Middle Eastern, North African actors for these roles. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Javier Bardem as Stilgar, but the man isn't Arab, but they purposefully dress him up to look Arab in this. I also like the way they changed the date palm scene, because in the book, it's Jessica that is talking to the Fremen about the date palms. But I like how the way the film changes that and makes Paul the one that's the center of the scene, because again, it adds to the wide idea to really experiencing and learning about the culture of the Fremen and of Arrakis. I also quite like the way Villeneuve is able to do the hunter-seeker scene, add in the tension without having to add in the monologues, because one of the things that is like a double-edged sword to the David Lynch film is the internal monologues, because I feel like on concept and on principle, I get what Lynch was going for. Because when you read the Dune book, there is just constant inner monologues like on every page, and I do like that. But then also in the film, it feels kind of hokey, it feels kind of cheesy, and I like the way how Villeneuve and his actors are able to communicate that internally without having to use internal monologues. But then also the internal monologues is like a quirk of the David Lynch film that I actually quite like.
You would deprive us of your talents at this time.
Sire, my honor demands.
They tried to take the life of my son! I don't give a damn about your honor!
So apparently in this scene, Leto and Jessica are dressed for the dinner scene. So, where's the dinner scene? You have enough time to put it in the film. Where's the dinner scene? Like, I'm not offended like some book fans are that they cut the dinner scene again, because in the book, the idea of the dinner scene is essentially just how the people of Arrakis feel about the Atreides, how the Landsraad feels about House Atreides, how the Atreides are moving to Arrakis to change it in some ways, and how they also have to kind of like play nice to the other houses that live in Arrakis. Like, there's a daughter from one of the houses that is like a water merchant or something that's trying to seduce Paul. There's a lot of games, there's a lot of plots within plots within plots and such. Like, that's the whole idea of Dune, is the idea of like plots and scheming.
They tried to take the life of my son!
I think it's so funny how Oscar Isaac is both Poe Dameron and also Duke Leto Atreides. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, like, that's the same person. Like, it's so weird. I love Oscar Isaac. He's so good, and he's so good in this film. He's a really good Duke Leto. I just wouldn't have expected it from him.
Get out! It understands.
Okay, so this creature here, we got the Dune fan theorists that are saying that it is Dr. Yue's wife. Other people are saying it's some like weird Clay Laxu hybrid creation thing. I don't know what it is. If it's Yue's wife, that's a really cool fan theory, and I'm sticking by that because I think that's really cool. It's funny because the Baron doesn't fly in the book, but I love Villeneuve's artistic license in using his hover suspensors and having him like float and levitate about. I don't know. I just like the way it looks. It's very demonic. It's very, you know, ghosty, dementor-like. I like that imagery. Also, it makes him look like a worm, so I'm assuming that's part of the reason why. Okay, so fun fact, when Duncan Idaho and Paul Atreides hug, apparently Timothée Chalamet need Jason Momoa in the ball, so that's kind of funny. It's funny, because in the book, this scene isn't very funny. It's more kind of like, the way it's played in the book, it's supposed to be very like, oh, this is actually about the Fremen culture, this is their sign of respect and stuff. But I also like the movie's comedic spin on it, like, it's a funny scene.
Judge of the change, sire. Dr. Liet Kynes.
Huh, that's not a man. Honestly, them gender-bending Dr. Kynes doesn't really matter. It's like a change that doesn't really matter in the end, because Sharon Duncan Brewster plays Dr. Kynes in a very elegant way. She brings a real presence and ability to Kynes, and I really enjoy her performance. It's one of those exceptions where gender-bending a character really doesn't matter. Okay, so one of the things that I love about the Spice Harvester sequence in any adaptation of Dune, to be honest, is that The Spice Harvester sequence, especially in the book, is the moment where I go, oh, Dune's actually, like, great. There's so much character work here where Kynes is trying to figure out what kind of man Duke Leto is, but also you see Duke Leto being a nice and honourable man, but then also in the book there's, like, this hidden subtext, and this is something the film doesn't really add, in the sense of that the Atreides aren't entirely good, they are just the lesser of all the greater evils. Like, the Atreides are still Imperials, they're still exploitative, but they're also the most noble of the great houses. Villeneuve doesn't really depict that sort of darkness in the film, but I do like the more honourable take on House Atreides in the film as well, though. But then also, the way Villeneuve depicts the Spice Harvester sequence, the sort of tension the scene elicits, it's so good. I love the way this whole part of the sequence is shot, like these really intense close-ups on Chalamet's face as Paul is really being affected by the spice. You can feel it all, you can see it all on his face. There's this sort of ethereal beauty to it, because you can tell he's having a vision, but you also don't know that he's having a vision until later on.
I recognize your footsteps, old man.
That jump cut is so great. I love it. It's just... that's filmmaking, man. It's so cool. The imagery and scale of the worm as it's coming out and swallowing the Spice Harvester is just incredible.
Someone will hand me a blade.
Someone will hand me a blade.
But I don't know who.
I don't know who.
Or when.
Or when.
Where.
Or why. No, it's where. Because I get that wrong all the time. It's like, I know he says, someone will hand me a blade, but I don't know where, or who, or when. I always mess up and say why. Hey, there's a cameo of the best character of the book. I can't wait to see her in part 2. I love the look of Salusa Secundus, though realistically, the scene is just there to go, hey look, the Harkonnens and the Sardaukar are teaming up to take on the Atreides because the Emperor is going to betray the Atreides. Like, yeah, it's a fine thing. We don't really need to be there either, but I like its inclusion in the film, mainly for the Sardaukar throat singing, because it's just cool. I've seen Dune fans complain about Jessica showing emotion. They're just like, why is she showing emotion? She's not supposed to. But I actually like the Villeneuve shows Jessica breaking down and then controlling herself, because in many ways it allows us, the audience, to empathize with her, but also understand that she is feeling all these feelings that she's supposed to be feeling. She's just holding them back. So Yue betraying House Atreides, I think, is the weakest part of the film, because it works narratively, just in terms of me, an audience member, buying it, unfolding. It doesn't unfold really organically in the film. It kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, Yue explains it and justifies it, and it's everything that's said and done in the book. But because the film has cut out the whole House Atreides suspecting there's a traitor amongst them subplot, you don't really buy Yue's betrayal. There are deleted scenes of Yue talking with Paul and talking with Jessica, and the scene where he's with Jessica, you see him crying about his wife Wanna. I feel like that needed to be in the film to justify and foreshadow him betraying House Atreides.
With me!
Bye, Gurney. I'll see you in part 2.
I'm going to replace your back tooth.
But remember, the tooth. The tooth. I love the imagery of the burning of the date palm trees, purely for the fact that it's Villeneuve illustrating the Harkonnens' lack of respect and the idea of the Harkonnens just being incredibly destructive. And at the end of the day, the Harkonnens are horrible for Arrakis. They hate Arrakis. They hate what it stands for. They hate the Fremen. It's a very strong and powerful image. You know, it took me a couple of watches to realize this, but the Baron actually full-on decapitates Yue. Like, I never noticed that. I just thought he cut his throat and then dropped into the ground. I realized he decapitated him. That's really cool. Okay, so the Baron putting on his shield to avoid the poison is something I both like and dislike, because it makes sense that he would put on his shield, but then it also does beg the question as to why even bother having him do that, because he's completely fine by the end. He doesn't get scarred, he doesn't get physically damaged. He just puts his shield on and he's fine. Okay, you know how I was debating on whether or not the Gom Jabbar scene is the best scene in the film? It may be the best scene in the film, but my personal favourite scene in the film is Paul's vision. I love it so much. The whole Holy War thing, mwah. Okay, if I'm going to critique the cinematography of this film, this is like a minor nitpick, but oh my god, the jump between the dimly lit interior of the still tent to the brightness of the vision is so harsh, it hurts my eyes when I see it in cinema. I saw the film recently in IMAX when they re-released it. Oh my god, it was so bright. And I both love that because of the juxtaposition, but I also hate it because it hurt my eyes so much. Whee! Whee! Really? Oh, flying teabagging for Dakin in the background. Overall, the CG in this scene is very good, but that compositing of Chalamet's face on that still suit is... it's not great.
All your words spreading across the universe like unquenchable fire.
That might be one of the hardest lines in, like, all of fiction. Like, it's not in the book. It's like, this whole monologue Paul has about the holy war spreading across the universe like unquenchable fire, a warrior religion. That's from the book, but it's repurposed to make it a more tragic monologue. But just, I love the way it's phrased. It's such a hard line. More deep!
Somebody help me, please.
Funny, that's me when I'm left with my thoughts for too long.
It's coming. I see the holy war spreading across the universe like unquenchable fire. A warrior religion that waves the Atreides banner in my father's name. Fanatical legions worshipping at the shrine of my father's skull. A war in my name. Everyone shouting my name.
Love it. I love Chalamet's performance in this scene. It's so good.
Get off me!
Do you know what I love about that there? It's the fact that it's a subtle payoff to Paul learning to use the voice. Like, he just does it. It's something you don't even really pay attention to. He tells Jessica to get off him, and she does. He literally uses the voice, and it's such a subtle payoff. So good. Hey, look, it's Muad'Dib! Again, like I said earlier, one of the things I love is how Villeneuve is so subtle and he's really trusting the audience here. He's just going, hey, look at this beetle. Duncan's going to die now. Bye, Duncan. See you in... Personally, I don't mind Kyne's death in the film. In the book, it's just Kyne's being stripped naked, walking through the desert, and then eventually dying of dehydration. I don't mind the more action-packed death of, you know, she's going to summon the sandworm and then is going to get swallowed and kill a bunch of Sardaukar. I think it's fine. And I think the reason why they changed it was purely for the fact that in the book, that scene is so in Kyne's head that you don't really need Kyne's walking through the desert. It's like, oh, father, I'm going to cure Arrakis and heal it and blah, blah, blah. We're going to add water to the planet. You don't need that.
The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience.
Hey, it's one of the famous lines from the book. Again, you know Villeneuve's a fan because they put it in the film. But also, I love how this whole vision sequence of Jamis being Paul's friend is really good representation of Paul's prescient power, because Paul can see the future, but it's not the true future. It always changes and shifts, and so in this vision, Jamis is Paul's friend. So later on when Paul says he was a friend of Jamis, it makes sense. But also, in an alternate timeline, an alternate pathway, if things had gone on a much better path, Paul and Jamis would have become friends.
Send word to Katie Prime to begin selling our spice reserves.
You know, I feel like we needed a Fade Router tease, but not like a really overt, explicit Marvel end credits scene of like, oh, we need Fade Router to actually appear. No, more just, I needed the Baron to be like, send word to Fade on Katie Prime to begin selling off our spice reserves. That's what we really needed. Okay, so this section of the film where Paul and Jessica are just wandering through the desert, I personally feel goes on for too long, and in many ways it feels like Villeneuve is just padding out the runtime, because whilst we get wonderful shots of the desert and of them walking through the desert, and there's a bunch of homages to a bunch of Dune covers, and I think we hear a bit of the 1984 theme in the score, overall, you don't really need this. And Villeneuve has even come out and said that he purposefully padded out the end of part 1 just because he didn't want to go too far into the story of them reaching the Siege Dubber. He wanted to end the film on the Jamis fight to thematically give Paul an arc, which I get and I respect, but I feel like you don't need all this time dedicated to Paul and Jessica wandering through the desert. And another critique of the cinematography I find is just that in this whole section here, it's way too dark. When I saw this film at the BFI IMAX, I could barely make out what was going on. It was really dark.
Do not run. You will only waste your body's water.
You will only waste your body's water. Honestly, no matter how much I critique the fact that Javier Bardem, they've purposely dressed up to make look Arab and such, I love him as Stilgar. I think he's like perfect casting. Back you dogs, she'll cut my throat. I love him.
Back you dogs. She'll cut my throat.
Paul Atreides must die for Kwisatz Haderach to rise.
That right there is essentially Paul Atreides' arc for the film. Kill the boy and let the man be born. It's not Paul's complete arc from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, but in terms of if you're going to split the book into two, that's a good arc for Paul to have. But a detail that I love about the vision too is how you see Jamis holding Paul's hand as he dies, which is what Paul does to Jamis later on in the fight when Jamis dies. It's Paul using his prescient powers to see the Fremen culture and to adapt into their culture, which then add more emphasis into the ideas of him being the Lisan al-Gaib and how he will know their ways. Okay, so I've gone on about Villeneuve being incredibly subtle. This is the one point in the film where he's just being unsubtle for the sake of it. Like, I don't know why they add in that insert shot of the knife, because we've seen it several times, and we know that Paul has said earlier that someone will hand him a blade. We kind of just can personally figure it out because Chani's giving him a Chris knife. Like, I don't know why we need to cut back to that shot of the knife from earlier. We know.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
I love the Atreides salute. It's so good. You know, I've heard people complain about the fight here. I like it. It's a bit short, but then again, it's a knife fight, and knife fights don't last very long. But also, the choreography isn't bad. It's very good. I love how quickly paced it is. I love how much the Jamis actor and Timothée Chalamet are really just going for it. It's quick, it's visceral. I would have liked for it to go on just a tiny bit longer, but overall, I like it a lot. Fashi. But also, I love the fact that Paul is so hesitant to kill Jamis, because in the book, the whole point as to why Paul is like kind of toying with Jamis is the fact that Paul is so used to fighting with a shield that when he's fighting hand to hand without a shield, he's fighting in a way that the Fremen think is him toying with, you know, Jamis, but he's not actually doing that. The Fremen just think Paul is toying with Jamis, but he's not. He's just fighting in a way that he's not accustomed to. But I like how the film changes it and makes him more hesitant to kill, because again, his whole character arc is to kill the boy and let the man be born.
Climb up, rise.
Do you get it? Jamis charged at Paul like a bull. Paul really is his grandfather's grandson. A thing that I love is that Denis Villeneuve said that Timothée Chalamet's hair, in a way, is like its own character, and I kind of like how the film uses that. Like, to show Paul's darker change, we have the hair fall right in front of his face. He looks more ominous. I think it's a really cool detail. My road leads into the desert. I can see it.
This is only the beginning.
Zendaya looks really pretty there. Demi, no! Paul, no! No! We all know that smile. We know what that means. Oh no. You know, the ending to the film works fine, but there's something about the way it's paced that just feels really rushed. Like, that last shot doesn't feel like a last shot. And in earlier drafts of the script and in earlier edits of the film, it was supposed to end a bit later on in the story, so it's a bit weird. Like, I still like the ending and I still think it works perfectly fine. I just think that there is something off with the ending. But honestly though, I am so excited for Dune Part 2. I love Part 1. I'd love to see both films back to back and see how they play together. But also, I want an extended cut for Part 1. There are scenes that need to be in the film, but Denis Villeneuve, mon ami, he's so adamant that he doesn't like deleted scenes, he doesn't like extended cuts, he thinks the film is complete as is. I get it, but I don't get it too. Like, come on, just release the scenes. And honestly, whilst I have nitpicks here and there, I absolutely love and adore this film. It's like a comfort film. I adore it. Just, this film was such an experience and means so much to me. I can't wait to see Part 2. I can't wait to see Part 3 if it gets greenlit. It's gonna be great. Denis Villeneuve's vision for this world is fantastic, and it's nice to see this kind of film actually come out in my lifetime. I will say this film is akin to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The way it's made, the amount of passion, love, and care that is put into this film, it's the same amount of love, passion, and care Peter Jackson puts into the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I'm just so glad to be alive to actually live and experience this, because it's so great to see. This is what cinema needs right now. This is my father's ducal signet. I am Paul Atreides. Okay, no, hold on. I may or may not have memorized that entire monologue. Udorosot udaufresihi mi free Kumuni. We'll get to it at some point. I'm going to save it till later, so make sure you stick around and watch it. Dune Part 2, I think, is going to be the best film of 2024. I love it so much. I think it's so great. I have issues with it as a book fan. I'll point them out here and there, but for the most part, I love this film. It's a brilliant piece of cinema. It's a brilliant piece of sci-fi. It's fantastic. It's the film that's going to stick with me for ages and ages. I genuinely love this film. And it's funny, especially when you compare it to the first one. I don't know which one I do prefer, because like, they're kind of different vibes. We'll get more into it as we progress through the film, but just, I am so excited to do this. I love this film so much. I love the cast. I love the cinematography. I love the editing. I love just Denis Villeneuve's vision and direction for Dune. I have my nitpicks as a book fan, as I said. I will point them out. Also, yes, for this special occasion, I finally put on the Dune still suit. I modified it a bit. There are no trousers anymore, so I can comfortably sit and wear this. I wore this when I saw the film in IMAX at the BFI on day one of release, March 1st. I wore it. It was one of the most uncomfortable cinema experiences, but I don't care. I saw the film. I had fun. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, share the video, and subscribe. But also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. It's all down in the description. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into this. Okay, before we get into the film, I do want to quickly acknowledge the nerdy aspect ratio talk, because the film in its current digital format is 239:1, which is standard CinemaScope. But the thing is, this film was shot entirely in IMAX, and there is an IMAX ratio version of the film available. You saw it in the cinemas, but it's kind of annoying that Warner Brothers did not release the film in its aspect ratio for the IMAX aspect ratio. Because Denis Villeneuve and Greg Fraser have talked in interviews and such that they filmed the film specifically in IMAX for IMAX, but then again, the 239 aspect ratio matches the first film, so when you watch the films back to back, they match, so I get it, but again, this is really super nerdy and like a massive nitpick, but it would have been nice to have at least had both versions of the film. Okay, so the opening Sardaukar bum 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 of this film is very interesting because its power of the spice is power overall. But the thing is, I don't know if that thematically fits the film or not. Because although the film mentions the Fremen destroying the spice and how it's impacting the Imperium and such, and Raban and the Harkonnens are getting hounded on by the Emperor for their low spice production and stuff, you don't really understand the importance of the spice melange, because the film, specifically Denis' vision for the film, doesn't really delve into what the spice can do. It doesn't go into the lore behind it. It doesn't go into the idea that not only does it open your mind, but also it keeps you eternally youthful, and also it allows you to space travel. I do think that yes, power over spice is power overall is technically a theme of the film, but I don't think it is the theme of the film. Like, you watch the first one, and the first one's message is dreams, a message from the deep. That, in many ways, is the thematic meaning behind the first Dune. This one, I don't think it fits.
Imperial Diary, year 10,191, third comment.
I love the opening narration with the Princess Irulan. It's kind of what we should have had in the first film instead of Chani, but it works for Dune Part 2. I like that we see her with her film book, her voice recording, her dictaphone, and she's talking about the teachings and the ideas of Muad'Dib and House Atreides and the histories of House Atreides. I love the score of the scene, I love the editing, I love the atmosphere, I love the look of Kaitane and Irulan's dressings. I do wish that Irulan's hair was slightly different. Again, I said in my Dune 1984 commentary, I wish it was more akin to Virginia Madsen's really over-the-top and opulent styles, but overall, I like what she's wearing. The opening really puts us back in the mood of Dune. The score itself is very reminiscent of Hans Zimmer's Holy War theme. The one thing I really do wish was included in this opening narration was the line, "The beginning is a very difficult and measured time," because, like, that's the Dune opening. That's so iconic. That's the opening narration of the book. I wish Denis found a way to slip it into the film, but he didn't. Also, the thing about this intro too with Irulan is that that shot of Irulan is stunning. Greg Fraser, again, just mwah, master cinematography. But also, you look at this shot and you go, damn, Florence Pugh is one of the most stunning people ever. And then, all of a sudden, Greg Fraser will shoot, you know, Timothée Chalamet, or Rebecca Ferguson, or Zendaya, and Austin Butler, and you're just like, damn, these people are very good looking.
Sister, father is dead.
Sister, father is dead.
This world is beyond cruelty.
This world is beyond cruelty. So one thing I will say about Dune Part 2 is that you could trim it ever so slightly. Especially considering the fact that the thing that I will say with the first hour of this film is that it does take a little bit to get to Fade Raltha. Because when we get to Fade Raltha, the story gets moving again. All of a sudden there's like a sudden burst of energy. You're like, whoa, okay, well this is awesome. The beginning stuff with Paul and the Fremen and Paul and Chani's romance and stuff is really good. I really like it. It just goes on for like a tiny bit too long. But the thing I will say that I absolutely adore with the Harkonnen eclipse sequence is the bit where they activate the suspensors and they fly up the mountain. Oh my god, is it so cool. Visually, it's stunning, but also, it feels very Stanley Kubrick. This was when I was watching it, I was like, oh, this feels very 2001. It's really good stuff. I remember sitting in my seat going, yep, this is cinema. Denis, mon ami, you are cooking. So one of the interesting things I find with Paul versus the Harkonnen soldier is that this is his second kill, and he's really out of breath and he's panting. I mean, yes, he did just sprint to go and kill the guy, but also, that is his second kill. The thing I really like about this film is all, like, the double meanings behind everything. Like, everything is presented to you, but they also have double meanings.
Don't let it out!
Okay, a thing I will say about Lady Jessica and the vomit gag is that whilst it's funny, it technically is also inaccurate to the books and the way Jessica is characterized, because Jessica is a Bene Gesserit. She is able to control her bodily impulses. She would not vomit over the sight of this water suction thing. I have seen some Dune fans go all nitpicky saying that Denis Villeneuve ruined Lady Jessica, made her too emotional and stuff. I don't agree with that at all. I feel like you need to see that because otherwise you would just think she's really emotionless and stone cold. And so the moments in part one where you see her crying, you see the vulnerability, because in the books you see it, but it's also done through Jessica's internal monologue. And so I like the way that Villeneuve visually translates it into the films by showing Jessica being emotional. Like, it makes sense. Okay, Stilgar does like a number of awesome animal-like noises. I don't know how he does it, but they are so cool.
I must sway the non-believers. If they follow me, we can disrupt space production. That's the only way I can get to the Emperor.
Okay, so the thing that I find funny about Dune Part 2 is how there are still critics going around calling Dune a white savior story, despite the fact that the film openly goes, hey, Paul Atreides is not a good person, he is actively manipulating the Fremen.
Others, false prophet. I must sway the non-believers.
Honestly, that talk right there, God, he's such a white savior, isn't he? But no, in all seriousness, you can't argue that the first Dune book, if you just read it by itself, is a white savior story. But when you take into account Dune Messiah and the overarching idea of the Paul Atreides story, Dune is not a white savior story. Not to mention the fact that Denis Villeneuve does not photograph Paul Atreides to look heroic. I mean, he kind of does, but he doesn't. Like, there's a double entendre behind everything. Like I said, everything has a double meaning. But the thing is, I do feel like when Dune Messiah comes out, you will go back and watch these films and go, oh yeah, Paul is very clearly not a good person, despite the fact that you watch these films, he isn't a good person, and he's also not a heroic figure. To the Fremen, initially, he may be. This film does present him as a hero to the Fremen and such, but also, he's not a hero. There are so many sequences in this film where you look at him and you go, oh, he's scary. Oh, he's like vicious. Oh, that's like really, really evil. I mean, we'll get to it when we get to it. Like, there are so many shots where I'm like, this is not a heroic character. One of the cool things I like about the filmmaking for the Water of Life trial is how it is basically Jessica's version of the Gom Jabbar. It parallels the Gom Jabbar scene from the first film, but also Hans Zimmer literally scores the scene to be like the Gom Jabbar scene from the first film.
He's from the south. You didn't notice his accent.
Nope, but I am certainly noticing yours. Okay, so when it comes to the cast of Dune Part 2, I think they're all fantastic. Zendaya is the weakest, but that does not mean I think she is bad. Overall, I think her performance as Chani is very good. She delivers a lot of the emotional moments really well. She does a lot of the action fairly well. When Paul and Chani are together, I really like it, but there is something about Zendaya's Chani that when she is by herself, especially at the beginning, when she's trying to act all tough and all like, yeah, I'm Fremen, I'm a Fremen warrior, I'm a Fedakin, you kind of go, nah, you're kind of just like a girl from Brooklyn. Like, you sound like an American girl. And it's mainly when she's trying to be tough, because I feel like when Chani is talking to Paul, specifically the scene where they first kiss and such, when she talks all softer and all like kind of ethereal, she fits the tone, she feels Fremen. It also doesn't help in this scene that she's with Shashikli and the other Fremen. It's kind of like, yeah, they're all like Arab-esque actors, and then there's just this American girl in Zendaya going, yeah, I'm Fremen. I'm not saying that Zendaya should have adopted an Arab-like accent, but she should have done something with her voice. Again, channel that like more whimsical, ethereal Chani, because when she does the more soft-spoken stuff, she sounds different. She doesn't feel like Zendaya, she feels like Chani. And I think whilst we're at it, let's tackle the subject of should Dune have included more Middle Eastern and North African actors with the Fremen in more prominent roles? Because this is a topic that I think is a double-edged sword in the fact of, yes, they should have, because if Hollywood is in its age of representation and all cultures matter and stuff, and we want to, you know, represent the world and represent all the underrepresented groups in the world and such, you should have had Arab actors portraying the Fremen. Javier Bardem should not be Stilgar, and Zendaya should not be Chani, whatever you want to call her. But also, at the same time, I've got 2 points for this. One, Javier Bardem is fantastic in this film. He is brilliant as Stilgar. I don't know who else you would get to play Stilgar. He plays Stilgar's religious fanaticism so perfectly. It's honestly just, I'm in awe of his performance. Like, if anyone in this film should get an Oscar, it's him. Give him the best supporting actor win right now. He deserves it. I will gush about him throughout this entire film. he's so good. But then also, the thing with the Fremen is that in the books, the Fremen are essentially Arabs. That's basically what they are. They literally have a festival called Ramadan. They're Muslim. But the thing is that at the end of this film, and in the books too, Paul leads the Fremen on a jihad that goes across the universe. In the film, they just call it the Holy War and such, but in the book, they explicitly use the word jihad. And so I don't think it is the best idea to get a bunch of Muslims and have them represented in a big franchise-like film and go, yeah, look at all these Muslims, look at how violent and oppressive they are. They literally go across the universe spreading their jihad and their culture and eradicating all the people that don't believe in their cause. Yeah, I don't think you want to do that. Honestly, it's such a tricky subject because Dune isn't the property that you should be trying to do the representation thing with, but you also should at the same time. Because the thing about Dune is that Frank Herbert was an ideas guy. The idea of the book is so forward-thinking in the sense of that humanity... Remember, Dune takes place in the year 10191. That also isn't adhering to the human calendar we know today. Dune takes place so far into the future that humanity has interbred so much that everyone basically adopts an olive skin tone. Like, essentially, every human is mixed race. And in the book, the Fremen visually aren't explicitly depicted to be Arab, but then also they're based off Muslim culture, so it's kind of like, okay, you probably should have cast Arabs, but then also I get why you didn't, because the idea is so, like, it's so forward-thinking. But then also, the film is going to face criticism from modern political activists who want to insert their ideas of what representation should be in their agendas and such. I don't know, it's an interesting topic. It's a subject I agree with, but I also don't agree with at the same time. Honestly, Stilgar is so good in this film. Like, he's both the comedic relief, but he's also so tragic in this film too. But also, his pure power of belief in Paul is so just... It's powerful. Javier Bardem just kills it. So, Lady Jessica in this film is absolutely terrifying. Rebecca Ferguson is fantastic in this. And the thing is that I really like what Villeneuve has done to Jessica, because in the book, in the last third, Jessica basically falls into the background and her kid, Alia, takes the forefront and such. But also, Jessica, she's like there, but she also isn't there. But Villeneuve here makes her more prominent. He makes her more of a manipulator. She's forcing Paul to go south, join the fundamentalists, and essentially rise as the Kwisatz Haderach. In many ways, she is fulfilling her orders as a Bene Gesserit. But also, again, she's terrifying in this. She's so, like, creepy and scary. She's, like, skulking around corners talking to Alia in her womb. It's so creepy. Which then makes me also think that Denis Villeneuve could easily have done Alia in this film if he just portrayed her like Jessica was in this film. Like, you don't even need to have baby Alia talking. Just have her walking around staring creepily and then doing the whole internal monologue echoing voice thing. Like, give Alia telepathy in some sense. Like, you don't need to do the whole, like, voice dubbing thing that they did in the 1984 film, but, like, I'm upset that he didn't do Alia, but we'll get onto that later.
What? Stop looking at me like that.
Yeah, Paul and Chani's romance is cute. It's, yeah, it's really well done. Really? They think that's the Lisan Al Gaib?
Reload!
Reload! God, he's such a white savior. Father, I found my way. I love how that's a callback to the conversation in part 1 where Paul's like, what if I'm not dad? What if I'm not the future of House Atreides? And then that's just like, oh, it's fine. Just find your own way. You might not even want to go towards it. I love that. But also, the thing that's so interesting about the idea is how Paul Atreides kind of like forces his own destiny. Like, a great man doesn't seek to lead, he's called to it. And in some way, shape or form, he is called to it by the Fremen, by the Bene Gesserit, by Lady Jessica. But also at the same time, he actively goes and seeks power. I think Denis and his writing team really capitalize on that idea. And the idea that Paul Atreides, he technically just isn't his father's son.
Desert spring. I love it.
I hate it. I prefer Johnny.
I prefer Johnny too, then.
Okay, not to make this a thing about bashing Marvel or anything, but it kind of says a lot when Paul and Chani in this one scene have more chemistry than Peter and MJ do in 3 Spider-Man films.
Only Fremen ride worms.
Well, I thought I'd become one, didn't I?
By name, not by blood.
Well, I'd very much like to be equal to you.
God, look at Paul Muad'Dib, the ultimate Riz master. Like, if any guy tried that, that just wouldn't work. Like, damn, how does he do it? I love Paul and Chani's love theme. It's so good. A quiet moment between the storms. Mwah. It's so stunning. It's such a beautiful piece of music. Hans Zimmer again just knocks it out of the park. I don't know how he does it. Like, every time he makes a film score, it just bangs. It's so good. Also, he's made so many love themes, but like, they all just bang, and they all are like so wonderful. One of the things I love about Denis Villeneuve's breakdown for this scene is the way he's like, I deeply love a shot like this.
I'm madly in love with a shot like that.
I love the way Denis Villeneuve talks as a director. He's so like artistic and passionate and like French Canadian. I love the way he talks. He's so like artsy fartsy, but like in a really charming way. Like he's so dramatic. He's like, oh, delete the scene is like killing your children. It's like, it's so good. I love the way he talks, and I love the way he visually talks about this type of shot and why he loves his imagery and such. I don't 100% agree with him about his stance on films and dialogue, but I do think for the most part he is right, because you watch a lot of films now and you go, this is way too wordy, or this is way too long, this is so overwritten. Like, let your imagery tell the story. Film is a visual medium. The Worm Ride is fantastic. It's wonderfully well realized. I loved it so much, and the thing that I love about The Worm Ride is that when I saw the film in 4DX, that is like one of the best roller coasters I've ever been on. The seats were all like... I literally was like gripping my chair for dear life. It was such a fun experience. I loved it.
It's not a prophecy. It's a story that you keep telling, but it's not their story, it's yours. What your people did to this world is heartbreaking.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
So if you watch this conversation and go, yeah, Paul Atreides is a white savior, I mean, he isn't. Like, he's like trying to help the Fremen and earn his stripes through being a Fedaykin. But also, he is manipulating them. He actively stated at the beginning of the film. But also, this conversation is Paul going, yeah, you forced all this, like, iconography, this messiah-like ideology onto them. I'm not their prophet. Why are you doing this? He doesn't like that he has a predetermined destiny or like a fixed plan by the Bene Gesserit. He's just like, you forced me into this. I don't want to do this, but I have to because obviously you've, changed the Fremen's perspective of me. They think I'm a prophet and such. But at this point in the story, Paul is both manipulating them, but also not at the same time. It's like he's kind of grown to love the Fremen. And obviously he does that through Chani.
Today, Muad'Dib dies! Muad'Dib! Show yourself!
Man, Rabban is such a chump in this film. I mean, the character himself in the book is a chump too, but I don't know. There is something about this film that makes Rabban maybe a little bit too much of a chump. Like in the first film, he at least did some stuff. In this film, he's kind of just like shouting at everyone and like killing people randomly for no real reason. It's kind of like, come on, Rabban. Do something interesting. Don't just be a chump. There he is. My boy, my boy.
Would you like some fresh meats, my darlings?
Would you like some fresh meats, my darlings? Austin Butler's Fade Ralpha is so fucking cool. Like, he's so cool. Fuck, he's cool. Like, when he arrives on screen, he brings such an energy to the film. Like I said, the first hour is really good. I really like it. But then also, it's kind of like, come on, let the plot progress. And then boom, Fade Ralpha shows up and you're like, yes. He's so good. The thing is too, Austin Butler completely transforms in this film. He is not Elvis. He has like one moment where he borderlines on Elvis, and that is when he is wrestling with Landville. He's got the knife and he's like giggling to himself. He's like, that's literally like the Elvis laugh he does on the Hollywood sign in Elvis. People are like, oh, he's still got the Elvis isms because he said, my darlings. And it's like, really? He just said darlings, but he doesn't sound anything like Elvis in this. It's a touch of bad. I also love what he does with his voice and how he tries to emulate Stellan Skarsgård's accent, because it comes from a character place. He wants to be like his uncle. Fade is like, I want to be like the Baron. I also want to become the ruler of Gidi Prime, and also I want to become the Emperor, and so to do so I have to be as cunning and as vicious as my uncle.
Fade Ralpha!
The Fade Ralpha chant is so good. It is literally in my bones. Every time it plays, I feel it in my bones. It's so good.
Plans within plans.
Oh, it's one of the most iconic lines from the book. It is kind of a shame that they deleted Thufir Hawat's scenes, because I would have loved to have seen Thufir, but also, I don't know where he fits in the film. But also, Denis Villeneuve cut Tim Blake Nelson, who he was rumoured to be Count Fenring, who was Léa Seydoux's husband, and I don't know, again, I don't see where he fits in the film. I would love for there to be an extended cut, but Denis Mon Ami is so adamant of like, no, I've deleted the scene, it is dead forever. Stop being so dramatic, Denis, just do an extended cut. Tell me he does not sound like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch when he does that. It's just Stitch.
Hal or Hana means family, and family means no one gets left behind or forgotten.
God, the aura is so good. Stand back! Okay, here he sounds a lot like Bill Skarsgård, which is kind of funny, because apparently there are some audience members who watched this didn't know Austin Butler was Fade Ralph and were just like, oh, I thought that was Bill Skarsgård. I think that's kind of funny. But then the thing is too about Fade Ralph in this film is that after having watched it, I don't know who else you get to play Fade Ralph, because I remember before this film had come out, my ideal casting choice was Robert Pattinson. And then obviously Austin Butler was announced. I don't know who he was. I saw Elvis, fell in love with Elvis, fell in love with that film, fell in love with Austin Butler, and I think he's fantastic as an actor. And then I watched the film, I think he's fantastic as Fade Ralph, and just, I don't know who else you get to play him. Like, Austin Butler does such an incredible job with this character. With so little. He does so little, but he does so much, and it's just, damn. Okay, so one of the things about Fade Ralph that I am still, I wouldn't say conflicted on, but I'm still like pondering is he good looking? Because on paper, he has no eyebrows, he has no hair, but then also Austin Butler makes it work. Like, he's beautiful, but like in an alien sort of way. I think that design choice is absolutely fantastic. Also, visually paralleling Paul and Fade by, you know, doing the raised knife over their hand and stuff. It parallels the idea that Fade Ralph and Paul Atreides are one and the same, more or less. Or at least it hints at the family connection between the Atreides and the Harkonnens, but also Paul Atreides isn't a hero. He is very much reminiscent of the villain of the film.
I ought to drown you in that tub.
I ought to drown you in that tub.
You tried to kill me?
This morning you were a playboy, feared and envied. But tonight, you're a hero.
Okay, so the thing that's interesting here is that in the book, it's not the Baron that tries to kill Fade, it's Fade that tries to kill the Baron. But the film switches it up because in the books, the Baron is gay and also loves raping little boys. But Denis and company have decided to change the Baron so that he's not as so homophobic, because in a way, Frank Herbert's writing of the Baron was kind of homophobic to go, oh, what makes him really evil? Oh, he's gay and he rapes little boys. So I like that Villeneuve and his writing team tone it back, but I also do like the fact that they don't entirely take away the Baron's homosexuality, as seen with the Fade kiss. I also love the Harkonnen fireworks, how they're kind of like inky. It's so cool. It's not like your general sparks and stuff. It's all like inky and smoky. It very much reminds me of the aliens in Arrival.
Put your right hand in the box.
Okay, one of the interesting things that I love is that Fade Ralph is seduced by Lady Margot Fenring, but also he is subjected to the trial of the Gom Jabbar. Now, this doesn't happen in the book from what I remember, though I do remember them, like, talking about it. Like, Margot was talking to Count Fenring, and it's just like, oh, I think we might have to test him with the box. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm pretty sure this is just made up for the film. But I think it's so interesting that Fade Ralph is able to pass the Gom Jabbar test, whilst also still being incredibly animalistic. I think it's interesting because either it shows that, A, the Bene Gesserit's, you know, selection choice is all, like, kind of made up, and they don't really know what they're talking about, and there's a massive foil in their system. But also, I love the fact too that in many ways, an essence of being human is to be, you know, somewhat animalistic. But then also, Fade Ralph has a code in this film. He very much is driven by honor to a point.
My hand is caked in sand.
Oh, Gunny's playing the balisette. Finally, we finally got Gunny playing the balisette. I'm happy.
I recognize your footsteps, old man.
Honestly, I love Paul and Gurney's reunion in this film. I think it's done so wonderfully. I kind of got a little bit, you know, emotional. I don't know if that's just a testament between the chemistry between Brolin and Chalamet, but also the characters themselves, the writing of Paul and Gurney. I think that both films do their bond really well. I also love the fact that they kept in, you young pup, you young pup.
You young pup. You young pup.
Although the thing I do wish is that Paul said, Gurney man! Gurney man! I also love the parallel to the first film where Paul takes down Gurney in this scene, and it is similar to the training scene in the first film where Paul takes Gurney down and he's on top of him and it's like, I have you. Visual storytelling. Denis, mon ami. Mwah.
My visions lead to horror. Billions of corpses.
Because you lose control.
Because I gain it.
God, he's such a white savior, isn't he? Like, again, it's these lines of dialogue that are very integral and in many ways are kind of heavy-handed and really just hammering home the idea that Paul Atreides is not a hero. He's not a good person. He's power-hungry. He is seeking revenge. But also, him gaining control is going to lead to the death of billions.
He who can destroy a thing has the real control of it.
He who can destroy a thing has the real control of it. I love the way Timothée Chalamet delivers that line. It is so perfect. I love the way he reads it. It's so, like, soothing. It's just so well delivered.
No matter what I do, you still don't trust me.
Because you're a foreigner.
I'm not a foreigner.
Not to me. But to the desert you are.
Okay, so one of the things that I am still struggling with on multiple rewatches is Chani's reluctance to side with Paul being the Lisan al-Gaib, because I don't know where Denis going with it. Because Chani loves Paul and Paul loves Chani, but then also in this scene, Chani's all just like, oh, but you're not really Fremen. But you are to me. But then also the way she says you're not Fremen is very xenophobic and is very just like, oh, I don't trust you. But then she's just like, but I do trust you.
Hidden by sandstorms which stretch 1,000 miles across the equator. Nothing can live there without faith.
Oh, God created Arrakis to train the faithful. I do kind of wish they said that line straight out in the film, but like I like that implied idea. Like, yeah, it's one of the most iconic lines in the book, and I do wish that Paul, similar to the 1984 film, actively said God created Arrakis to train the faithful, but hey, it's technically still in there. Also, the idea of there being a fundamentalist division of the Fremen is something that I think the film made up. I do think there's like a slight hint here and there in the book, but for the most part, this idea is totally made up, but I also kind of like it because it really forces the idea of Paul has to go to meet the fundamentalists, and in many ways he's going to get overwhelmed by them, but also he takes the water of life and actively chooses to spark up the fundamentalists. Okay, so this scene with the water of life origin with Jessica and this Fremen lady, it's cool, but also I don't think you entirely need it. And also it doesn't really acknowledge the fact that the worms create the spice, because from what I remember, the spice melange is worm poop.
It's early morning. What are you doing here?
It's early morning. What are you doing here?
Harvest spice at will.
Harvest spice at will. I love Austin Butler's line deliveries as Fade. They are so iconic. One of my favorite things about watching this film several times in cinema, I saw this film 6.1 times. It's so good. Every time I left the cinema, I would just have a Fade Routher quote like stuck in my head, and I would just randomly say it throughout the day. Like the first time I saw it, me and my friend Darren, we just kept going, she's your bet? Like to each other for no reason. We just kept doing that. And then after another viewing it was harvest spice at will. And then after another viewing it was it's early morning, brother. What are you doing here?
Only pleasure remains.
So Fade just killed Shashikli, I think that's the character's name. And this is a side character that has been fairly, prominent throughout the film. But at no point does anyone acknowledge her death, especially Chani, because at the beginning I'm assuming she's Chani's friend. At no point does Chani go, hey, where is my friend? So that was my older sister Aman. She brings up a very valid point about Chani. When we watched the film together, she was just like, wait, why does Chani not acknowledge that her friend died? And it's a very valid nitpick. I'd say it's a nitpick. I don't think it's like a real like deep issue with the film, but yeah, it is something that is kind of funny to think about. Also in this scene, Fade Routher is wearing a cape, and I have so many questions, like why is he wearing it in this scene? Why does he not wear it throughout the rest of the film? Why is he wearing it now? Who fucking cares? It's so fucking cool.
Talk to me, Thomas. You need to see.
Okay, so a change they do in the films that I do like, though I do wish they kind of committed to one scene earlier on in the film, is Jamis. Paul's visions of Jamis are really cool. I love that. In many ways, metaphorically, Paul was a friend of Jamis. I do just wish they kept the scene early, though, where Paul was at Jamis's funeral. He gave his water to Jamis, and the Fremen were just like, oh, he gave water to the dead. Wow, he really was a friend of Jamis. But the thing is, too, is that I do like how the films make Jamis very prominent in Paul's decision into doing the things that he has to do, like going into the desert and also becoming the Kwisatz Haderach.
Paul, don't worry. I'm with you.
Okay, so now that we get to it, we have Anya Taylor-Joy as Alia. Perfectly good casting. I'm happy with that. But the thing is that seeing the idea of Alia is just... Denis chickened out on Alia. I'm sorry. He could have easily done it. He literally proved early on in the film that he could have done Alia, just do it the way that he did with Jessica. You know, like the telepathy and such, like, you could have easily done it. I'm also like a tiny bit bitter because Alia is like one of my favorite characters in the first Dune book. Like, my favorite characters in that book are Alia, Fade Routher, and Jessica. Those are like the three best characters in that book. And it really bums me out that we don't really get Alia in this. Like, when you look at the future of Dune, what is Alia going to do in Dune Messiah? Like, she doesn't really have much of an arc in Dune Messiah. Unless he's going to incorporate some elements of Children of Dune into Dune Messiah. Like, what is he going to do with Alia in that film? Because all of the interesting stuff happens in book 1. Oh hey, that's the cover to Dune Messiah. I love that imagery, that's so cool. I'm also very glad that they still kept the reveal of Lady Jessica being the Baron Harkonnen's daughter, and how Paul is essentially half Harkonnen. Harkonnen, whatever you want to call it. We're doing the movies right now, so I'm sticking to Harkonnen. I also love the imagery of the scene with Paul's hand, where he's just like, our enemies surround us, but I do see a way, there is a narrow way through. It literally solidifies the idea that he is the one that points the way, but also the imagery of the hand of God, which is the second moon. But the thing is too that I love when it comes to the score of this film too is how Hans Zimmer really encompasses the idea that the Atreides and the Harkonnens are now one family. As soon as Paul discovers that he is half Harkonnen, you get the arrival theme where Paul is arriving to the fundamentalist south, and you hear the hints of the Fade Ralpha theme in the Paul Atreides score, but then also the theme that's playing is also reminiscent to Leaving Caladan, which was the Atreides theme in the first film. It's played in a more darker way, but it's still that Leaving Caladan Atreides theme. It's now mixed in with the Fade Ralpha Harkonnen theme. I love that. It is audio storytelling, I guess. It's brilliant. Also, this bird's eye view shot that looks very much like an ant farm is stunning. I don't know how they shot it. Greg Fraser, you are a genius. You are a master. It is stunning.
You think I'm stupid enough to deprive myself of the best of us?
Okay, sad thing, I may or may not have learnt this scene off by heart, because I'm not gonna lie, Timothée Chalamet absolutely kills it in the scene, and I love this monologue. It's so good. The only thing I didn't learn was the bit where he's all just like, oh, your nan got blinded by a rock and the planet was once called Dune. But yeah, enjoy my recital of Paul's speech.
You must take his place by defeating him and returning his water to the well.
You think I'm stupid enough to deprive myself of the best of us? V'turadim biwatzama.
I'm pointing the way!
Udorosot udau fresihi mi fribit kumuni. Gau bakakali kakari hudai jahaish. But you think you could have a chance. Isna the judge.
Dune.
Is that a game?
Ufaisi fashi sluzda, di kashla minazuhu, hianzadaha, chibihu crash. This is my father's ducal signet. I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis. Erulitina ashirani, nelisan al-gaib, Roy Dimanaluk, ashiki. Man, Stilgar is such a... I don't know what to call him. I mean, he's like a hype man, but he's also like just super obsessed. Like, he literally was just like, bro, kill me. Just kill me. We need you. It's like, oh, damn. Not only does it show the plight of the Fremen, but also just how kind of like far gone Stilgar is in believing in Paul. Okay, so does Chani love Paul or not? Because she literally pulls her knife on him. It's like, she loves him, but she also doesn't believe in him being the Lisan al-Gaib. Where is this going? I don't know what this is supposed to mean. Denis, you have some questions to answer in Dune Messiah, because I don't get it. Paul literally even says she will come to understand in time.
Do you think you could have a chance? It's not the judge.
Fun fact, the judge in Arabic means chicken, so Paul essentially just went, you're just a chicken, chip, 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 chip.
Sheath Geem, Shari.
Again, the look on his face, the way Javier Bardem captures religious fanaticism is so just brilliant. There's no other word to put it. Like, he really just goes all in. He's genuinely phenomenal in this.
This is my father's ducal signet.
I love the detail and Josh Brolin's facial acting when he sees Paul put on the ducal signet ring. Like, the film does such a wonderful job of kind of like instilling the patriotism of House Atreides. Like, Gurney has undying loyalty to House Atreides, but also this is kind of like him seeing his young student rise. He's now become, you know, his father in a sense. It's brilliant. I love that he's literally just talking about the moon, because if you remember in the first film they mentioned that the second moon is called the Hand of God. Like, I love that detail. Okay, fun little editing, continuity, mistake thing. Still God rises twice. Don't know if you caught that, but I did.
What do we do?
Oh, that's the Twitter meme.
Do we do?
Okay, so Christopher Walken I think is perfectly fine as the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, but I don't think he really does much with the role. Like, this could have really been any other actor. It didn't have to be Christopher Walken. Like, he's good, don't get me wrong. I just don't feel like he fully embodied the character. It's just Christopher Walken be like, where's Muad'Dib?
Do you have any idea who this Muad'Dib could be?
Okay, I love this sequence so much, but Hans Zimmer, where is this musical track on the score? Like, I know the music playing in the scene is a hybrid of Arrival and the Kwisatz Haderach theme, but like, where is it on the soundtrack? I want to listen to this. Let me live out my fantasies of being a false messiah. Also, Atomics! Atomics! When it comes to the Battle of Arrakis, I do kind of like how the film stays similar to the book in the sense of that it doesn't go full on like action set piece, oh here's like a massive war movie now. This isn't Helm's Deep or anything. I do like that we get to see more action than we do in the book, because in the book there's pretty much like nothing. It's like Paul goes into a cave and he like beats a bunch of raiders or something, and then he finds that his original son is dead. Also, that's something too, Chani has the blue ribbon in this film, but it doesn't really mean anything. It's like the film changed the meaning, because in the book the blue ribbon means that she's pregnant, but in the film it's just she's in love, and it's like, that's a bit dumb. I've seen fan theories saying that Chani's already pregnant, and I hate that. If that happens in Dune 3, no. No. I love how she's like super out of breath and tired, but then as soon as an explosion happens, she's like, well, okay, back into action.
Grandfather, you die like an animal.
God, he's such a white savior, isn't he? Now, honestly, if you watch the scene and you think Paul Atreides is a hero, like, what is wrong with you? He's literally dressed like a jihadi militant warlord. He walks in, stabs the Baron in the neck, and just goes, you die like an animal. Not to mention the fact his entire demeanor changes. When he becomes the Kwisatz Haderach, he drinks the water of life. He changes. He's lit differently. He's always like basked in half light. But also, he's got like this new like hunch. He kind of walks around like Fade Ralph, a very animalistic, very kind of like predator-prey type of feels. That's what he is. He's not a hero. He's not walking around with his chest puffed out like a royal prince. No, he's literally a scary, animalistic like figure just like going out to kill people. Also, Austin Butler is genuinely brilliant in this film. Like, he does so little but so much at the same time. Again, like I said, when things happen, there's a double or triple meaning behind them. Like, when Paul stabs the Baron, you can tell that Fade is both pissed but also extremely pleased. He's like, this guy killed my uncle, but also, he killed my uncle. That means I am now the ruler of House Harkonnen. I'm the ruler of Gidi Prime. But then also, when Paul uses the voice, he gets like really turned on and really horny. Silence! And then when he sets eyes on Paul for the very first time, he's just like, oh, this is Muad'Dib. This is who they're talking about. He's kind of, oh, I kind of respect him. He's kind of cool. Raban's death is something I still don't know how I feel about, because there are some times I watch it and I think it's perfectly fine, and then there are some times I watch it and I feel like it's really rushed. I don't know, maybe if Raban had something else to do in the film other than just being a chump. I don't know.
I want you to know, I will love you as long as I breathe.
I want you to know that I will love you as long as I breathe.
They may be curious to hear my side of the story, don't you think?
Again, look at the way he's walking into the room. His demeanor has changed. He walks around with like a very sinister hunch. He's like always basked in shadow. The lighting isn't flattering, it's sinister. Paul Atreides is not a hero. Like, I genuinely do question the media literacy of audiences sometimes. Like, it's not that hard to go, oh yeah, this is really like evil, sinister lighting.
I am Paul Atreides, son of Leto Atreides, Duke of Arrakis.
I am Paul Atreides, son of Leto Atreides, Duke of Arrakis. I love the way Timothée Chalamet delivers that line. It's fantastic. Like, the look on his face too. He looks really like weaselly. He looks really sinister. That Arrakis delivery. So good. Silence! Okay, I won't lie. As a book fan, I am kind of upset that Denis Villeneuve cut out the I remember your Gom Jabbar. Now you'll remember mine. I can kill with a word exchange, because it's kind of like important. It parallels the beginning of the book. It also sets up bits of Dune Messiah with Gaius Helen Mahayim. Like, Why is it not in the film, man? I also love that the Paul and Feyd fight happens as the sun rises. It really parallels the ending to part 1 where James says then the sun will witness our death or whatever. And then we get even more parallels to the knife fight in part 1 where Paul tells Feyd, may thy knife chip and shatter, like James told him.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
May thy knife chip and shatter. May thy knife chip and shatter.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
Again, the layers in Butler's performance, like, there's, like, double meanings behind it. He's both just like, oh, that's a really hard line, but also just like, oh, I'm gonna mock you now. This knife fight between Paul and Feyd, Denis Villeneuve made for me. This is everything I love about cinema. We got silhouette shots, we got kick-ass choreography, we got my boys, Austin Butler and Timothée Chalamet. This fight is awesome. One of the things about the fight that I love is how Paul does this really awesome flip move and then all of a sudden Feyd just like kicks him to the ground after doing it. I think that's so funny. Also, Paul in the fight pounds his chest similar to how James pounded his chest when he was fighting Paul at the end of part 1. Also, when Feyd stabs Paul, he goes, ah! Again, really emphasizing the animalistic tendencies, which again is really fascinating because he's somehow able to pass the Gom-Jabbar test, which is meant to test the difference between humans and animals. Also, the way Paul beats Feyd in this is very similar to the way Paul beats Gurney in the training room scene, except for this time Paul actually commits and like stabs Feyd. The thing that I took issue with the first time watching, that I now don't really have much of a problem with, is the fact that Paul gets stabbed twice and he takes out the blades. I'm like, shouldn't he be bleeding out? It's a movie thing that I don't entirely love, but you do have to remember that in the first film, Dr. Kyne says that a still suit loses about a thimble of water a day, and so I'm guessing the still suit is keeping the blood from leaking out of the suit. I also love the tension between Paul and Feyd as they're both lowering themselves to the ground. There's kind of like a homoerotic nature to it, which adds to the idea of the fact that, remember, Paul is supposed to be a girl, and the fact that if Paul was a girl, the Bene Gesserit would have wed the Atreides heir to the Harkonnen heir. So, in many ways, Paul and Feyd were meant to be married.
Listen, Gabe!
Okay, this bit from Stilgar is really funny, but also, the thing about it is that it's funny, but it's also really tragic too, because he's watching this fight and he thinks Paul is going to lose. And you see in Bardem's face of just like, oh my god, if Paul loses this fight, I was wrong about everything. I put my faith in this guy, and if he loses, what the hell? But then Paul wins, and that moment, whilst it can be read as incredibly comedic, it's also a moment of just like, oh, thank god I was right. Oh, okay, he is the Lisan al-Gaib. Okay, Emperor, you didn't even kiss that ring. Was that intentional or not? Like, he didn't even kiss it at all. His lips didn't even brush it. Oh look, Paul, Chani, and Irulan are in a literal triangle. Love triangle.
Lead them to paradise.
Hold on! Lisan al-Gaib! Again, Stilgar is so tragic as a character. He is so blinded by faith in Paul that he is the Mahdi. He is the Lisan al-Gaib. His jihad, his holy war, is justified. It's going to be really hard-hitting when we get to the end of Dune Messiah, because Stilgar's arc in the books is really heartbreaking. His realization that Paul Muad'Dib is just a man. It's so good, and I just know Javier Bardem is going to play it to perfection. I also love the track Kiss the Ring. It's like the epic reorchestration of A Quiet Moment Between the Storms, but it's more like operatic and stuff. It's so stunning. Hans Zimmer really just killed it with this film. But the thing I will say is that while Zimmer's leitmotifs in this film are incredible, the overall soundtrack isn't as good compared to part 1. Okay, so ending the film with Chani so like anti-Paul, I don't know where they're going with this. I really don't. Dune Messiah has a lot of things to change, alter, make things make sense, because in the books, Chani is ride or die with Paul. She believes in him. She's not anti-Paul as the Lisan al-Gaib. She is literally his #1 supporter. And it's like, okay, where's Denis going with this? Because we've literally seen in visions Chani is by Paul's side. So is she corrupted by power? Does she just go, oh, I'm going to be with Paul because he's the most powerful person in the universe? Is she forced to be with Paul? But Paul also tells Jessica after he's taken the Water of Life that she will come to be by his side. She will understand in time. So how does that happen? Again, I just need to see Dune Part 3, Dune Messiah, whatever they're going to call it. I need it now because this film is great. And I just need more. I mean, I've done a whole video about Dune Messiah. You can watch it up there. And it's like, Denis Villeneuve just can't chicken out on certain things. But also, he has to make things make sense from the end of this film. And just, I really want to know where he goes. I really do. But yeah, I think that's enough Dune Part 2 for today. Yeah, that was That was fun. I love this film so much. Unless something astronomical happens, this I think is going to be my favourite film of the year. Just, it's so good. I love it. And just, yeah, those are my thoughts on the film. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media, all the good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time. Nebula Award!